Okay, last time that we were talking about, the last thing I did was stand next to a person who was much shorter than I am and talked about how to get heights. And we talked about how we could get better and better measures of heights. Okay, that is called, let's go to the PowerPoint, that is called reliability. Reliability measures the accuracy of the score, right? How accurate is your measure? So we can, it's pretty clear that using a yardstick would probably be more accurate than just a guesstimate of how tall. Who was it that we were measuring? Tell me your name again. Jennifer. So we had a guesstimate. We were off by, I don't know, from the tallest guesstimate to the shortest was 4 inches, 5 inches. A yardstick would probably bring us within maybe an inch or so, maybe an inch or two. A tape measure where you didn't have to put it down and then hold your finger and put it up again would probably be more accurate. And then we could probably even get more accurate by putting her on a doctor's. Anybody ever gone to the doctor twice in a row? Come back to me, okay? Anybody ever gone back to the doctor twice in a, within 3 months? First time they say you're 5. One time they said I was 5'9.5". I almost passed out. Right? I said, "Oh my God, it's true. I'm losing height." Next time I was back to my regular height of 5'10.5". So those are a little bit 5'10", and then we could get lasers. Then I stood next to Jennifer and said, "Okay, this is my Jennifer. Can you play basketball?
Can I?
Push it down.
No.
But better than I can, believe me. Okay. Who here ever played basketball? You play basketball? How tall are you?
I'm
5'8". Okay. Tell me your name.
Amber.
So Amber's 5'8". I'm 5'10". I told you what the coach said about me. I'm the worst basketball player that he'd ever seen, right? I'm sure it's still true, right? So I'm going to say I'm going to use height. Clearly, it's better to be taller if you play basketball. How tall are you?
5'6".
Push it down.
5'6".
5'6". You played basketball, huh? Believe me, she's a better basketball player than I am. All right? Believe me. Okay? Who else played basketball? Anybody here play basketball under 5'10"? Yeah, how tall are you? Push it down.
5'7".
5'7".
On a good day.
On a good day, right? So, okay. So if I were to say, okay, but let's say I have 3 basketball players. I say, okay, I've got it now. I know who's the best basketball player. Amber's the best. She's 5'8". Second best is, push it down.
Allison.
Second best is
Daniel,
he's 5'7", and Allison's third because she's 5'6". Well, most people might say, even though you've measured their heights to within 1/1,000,000th of an inch, and you've got it exactly, or let's say 1,000th of an inch, that's my reason why. Is that really a good measure of how good a basketball player here? I'm taller than all of them. And if you got us out in a basketball court, I'm telling you, I'd be the worst by far. Okay, anybody remember Kelvin Murphy? He was 5'10", right? He played for the Rockets, and he looked like a midget out there. My son once said, "Daddy, how come that player's a midget?" He was when Kelvin was playing, right? I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "No, all the other guys are unbelievably tall." I said, "He's my height." Right? So even though Pace be tall, he was obviously one of the best basketball players ever, right? If we took all the people in the world, he'd be in the, he was the top 1/100th of a percent, right? And there are people who are anybody else very tall and you can't play basketball worth a damn. Yeah, how tall are you?
6'2".
You can't play basketball at all, right? How tall are you?
5'10".
5'10", you can't play basketball, right? Yeah, she's going like this. Okay, and that's an issue, let's go back to the PowerPoint, of validity. And validity asks, now it's obviously much more complicated than I want to making out here. You need to take a statistics test to talk about this. There are different kinds of validity, different kinds of reliability. But if the test measures what it claims to be measuring, the test is valid. And so while there's no doubt that IQ tests are pretty reliable, at least the old tests, we'll have to see about the new ones. If 10 trained people give them, you can be pretty sure the scores are going to be pretty close if they give it to the same person. Of course, the person's going to learn from taking the test, but that's something else. But the question is, what are they measuring? What are they measuring? Okay? Okay, so come back to me. You know, what's on them? Okay? Okay, what I'm going to do now is give you a little quiz. And you're going to hear, those of you watching this on tape, take the quiz. You're going to mark the quiz with three things. You're either going to say IQ. I'm going to give you questions. This is a question from an IQ test, or it's a question from a standardized achievement test. You mark it XA. Right, this is from a standardized achievement test. Or TT, that stands for a teacher test, right? Okay, so so here are the questions. Okay, I'll leave the code up there. Question number 1. What is the distance from Detroit to Houston? Is that from an IQ test, a standardized achievement test, IQ test, or from a teacher test, one I took from teachers? I have these questions memorized. I've been doing it for a while. Okay. Question number 2. Okay. Shirts sell for $6 a piece. If you don't have to give the answer. If you bought 3 shirts, how much change would you get from a $20 bill? Is that an IQ test, a standardization test, or a teacher test? Okay, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to look at the. Okay, never mind. Okay. The next one is, who discovered Greenland? Okay. The next one is, how are light and sound the same? Remember, I took these from all different levels of teachers' tests, all different levels of standardized levels of IQ tests. And the last one is, I can't tell you the whole thing, it's too long, but basically you're locked in a room and the windows are locked and have break-proof glass and the door is locked and you're given certain details about the room and there's certain things in the room and you have to figure out how to get out of the room. Okay, you can't just smash the windows or knock down the door. Okay, and there's a way to do it. Okay? Okay, now we're going to take a little vote. We're going to see. You have it down there? Those of you at home, take a look. How many people think that the first question came from an IQ test? 1 person. How many people think came from a standardized achievement test? 3 people, 4 people, 4 or 5 people. How many think it came from a teacher test? Almost everybody. Second question, IQ test. Who had it from an IQ? 1 person. Who had it from a standardized achievement test? Ooh, a bunch of people. Almost everybody. Anybody have it from a teacher test? 1 person. Well, we're on the third question now. Third question, who thought it was from an IQ test? What question was that? I don't even remember anymore the order given. What?
Greenland.
Greenland. Who discovered Greenland? 5 people. Who thought it was from a standardized achievement test? 2 people. Who thought it was from a teacher test? Just about everybody. How many questions did I give? 5? Fourth question, who thought it was from an IQ test? So that was how our light and, what do you call it, the same? Oh, about 1, 2, 3, 4, about 10 people. Who thought it was from a standardized achievement test? About 3 people. And who thought it was from a teacher test? Yeah, so it's about 50, most 50%. And the last one about being in a room, that was the last one. Who thought it was from an IQ test? Standardized achievement test? Teacher test? Nobody. Okay, I'll give you the answers now. Come back to me. They're all from the IQ test, except the last one, which is just a bunch of junk I made up just to, you know, to impress people. Okay, now the truth is, they are not exactly what's on the IQ test. So I picked 2 different cities from the ones that are on the IQ test. The math problem's a little different from the one on the IQ test because this is broadcast on public airwaves, and what's on the test is a secret. Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, I'm trying to tell you your child is retarded because of the IQ test. Can you tell me what's on the test? No, it's a secret. I'm afraid your child's going to need an operation. Can you tell me why? No, diagnosis is a secret. The tests we use are a secret. Can't tell you what the test showed. It's, okay, we'll see why they have to be a secret. Okay, why they really have to be a secret, because as you can already tell, you can just memorize the answers, right, to all the questions on there. Okay, who's stunned? Raise your hand if you're starting to be a little shocked by what's on there. Just wait. Okay, so the question is, what do these tests measure? And even more so, no, not even more so. What do these tests measure? And by the way, since you're basing everything you're doing on the statistical theory I've been talking about adding things up, right, and getting the average and then a standard deviation, are you being faithful to the math you're supposed to be doing? Okay, now, the IQ test has undergone a big change in its last edition. Here it is. I'll show it to you. And if another one comes out by the time this tape is done, I'm sorry. This is a test. See how close you can get. It's called the WISC-4, right? WISC stands for here we go, Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children version 4. Okay? Now, I will come back to me. I will tell you right now that one of the reasons why the questions have not changed too much, but the scoring, at least in theory, has changed, and they've changed some of the subtests, and they're using a different kind of statistic. I promise I won't try to teach you factor analysis in this course, but I'll try to explain it just a little bit. But and one of the reasons is because of the criticisms that people like me have been bringing against these tests almost since they came out. Okay, as you'll see in some of the articles that I've assigned to you, right? Measurement people think these tests are just miserable. As it said in one of the articles, how do you measure a multidimensional thing like intelligence on a linear scale? Or to put it a different way, what that person is saying is, people's intelligence, there's all kinds of areas in which people function better and worse. Right? Some people are good at this, and some people are good at that, and some people do better at this, and some people do better at that. How do you boil that all down to one number? That's what that basically talking about. But we'll get to a lot of those criticisms, and I'm going to try to explain to you the reason why they have changed the scoring, because they've been bitterly criticized for having no theory at all. And now they're going to say, well, now we do have a theory. We have a measurement theory. But they really don't. Okay, so what we're going to have to start to do, let's go back to the PowerPoint. I'm going to show you the IQ test, the way it existed. This is the Wechsler test, the one that's the most commonly used by David Wechsler. It was really the first one, I believe, but it's the first one to go back to the standardized, rather than the CA over MA. It was the first one to use, that approach to IQ, the one that overwhelmed American testing in general. And the way the traditional IQ tests work, subtests work, there was something called verbal IQ and something called performance IQ. Okay? And under the verbal IQ, there were 5 tests. And under the performance IQ, there were 5 tests. There we go. Okay? And what you did was, see if you can get my, okay, never mind. You added up these 5, the score on the information, the score on the similarity, the score on the arithmetic, the score on the vocabulary, the score on the comprehension. You took the score. Then you added up the score. Okay, thanks, so that's good. Then you added up the score on those 5 tests. Okay? Then you saw how the child did on those 5 tests compared to other people his or her age. Okay, let's go back here. And then saw how many, no, you can keep my picture there. How many standard deviations above or below the mean, okay, the child's score was for his or her age. Okay? Then you added up these 5 tests: picture completion, picture arrangement, block design, object assembly, and coding. You added up the scores on each of these 5 tests, okay? Saw the total that the child got on these 5 tests, compared it to other people, her or his age. Today's a his day, but never mind. Okay, and that's how many standard deviations above or below the mean the person was. Then you added up the score. So what you got from that in the first instance was a verbal IQ. In the second instance, what they call a performance IQ. Period. Okay. Then they added up all the score on all 10 tests. Saw how much you were above or below the mean for people your own age, and on that basis decided, what your total IQ was. Now, because of the nature of this, okay, the total IQ was somewhere between this and that. So if your performance IQ, verbal IQ was 90 and your performance IQ was 100, it would be somewhere between 90 and 95. But because of the nature of the statistics, the curvature nature of the line, etc., it wouldn't be exact. It might not be 95. It might be 93. It might be 96. Okay, it would be somewhere between the two. You don't just average these, you add them all up again and look again. But it doesn't matter, okay? And the one that says, what's your IQ, is that total IQ. Now remember, it's not a Q anymore. It's not a quotient. It's not a quotient, right? It's just how many standard deviations above below the mean you are, but they still use the same idea. Okay, come back to me. Almost everyone who today is sitting in classes for the retarded or developmentally delayed or whatever they call, who's been labeled learning disabled, who's been labeled et cetera, has been labeled that way based on these tests. I'm going to add up your score on a bunch of tests and see whether your total, whether your score is at the mean, above or below. And whether you're above or below, so if you're 1 standard deviation below the mean, let's go back here. Go back to the PowerPoint. So if your score is 1 standard deviation below the mean, since I give 15 points, your IQ will be 85. If it's a half a standard deviation, it'll be about 90. If it's 3 standard deviations below the mean, it'll be 70, right? And that's retarded range. If it's a standard deviation and a half above, so I'm giving 15 points, so 115, it'll be 120, 122, something like that. See what I'm saying? Remember, you get 15 extra points for every standard deviation. If your IQ is a tenth of a standard deviation above, your IQ will be 101, right? I'll give you roughly 101, 102, something like that. You understand what I'm saying? Because you get 15 points for every standard deviation. Now, let me emphasize one other thing. The ages that I used initially for the examples, all right, let me get the manual here, are not really the ages that I used. I made it rough and dirty, okay? In fact, the ages are broken down by increments, and I have to look at the new one, if I can get the box open, this is a test of my intelligence. Can you open the box that has the test in it?
Yeah. Turn it around.
Turn it around. Yes, I'm on the wrong side. Thank you very much. Okay. So, in other words, when you're initially scored, here, for instance, is here is a. I see. How close can you get? You can't get close enough. Under 12-year-olds, if you're anywhere from 12 years, 0 months, 0 days to 12 years and 3 months old, which would be 12 years, 3 months, and 31 days old, you're compared to other people your age. You understand what I'm saying? Then they go from 12 years 4 months to 12 years 7 months and 12 years 8 months to 12 years 11 months, and right? You understand what I'm saying? They break the age bracket down into 3 age groups. Okay? Do you understand the point here? So in other words, it's broken down. So if Jennifer, right, is 9 years, 3 months, 9 years, 3 months and 27 days old. And I'm 9 years, 4 months, and 2 days old. I'm 6 days older than she is. And we give the exact same answers on the IQ test. She's going to have a higher IQ than I do. Because she's been comparing to, it'll be a slightly younger age group than I am. Right? I'm being compared to kids who are slightly older. Right? Or to put it a different way, okay, I gave, tell me your name here.
Rebecca.
There's Rebecca. Say, wave to the fans, Rebecca. There's Rebecca, okay? I gave Rebecca, I was supposed to give Rebecca an IQ test last Thursday when she was 6 years, 11 months, and 28 days old. But I got sick. So now I'm here on Tuesday when she's 12, when she's exact on her 7th birthday. So she's 7 years, 0 months, and 0 days old, right? She gives me the answer, oh, she's retarded. But if she'd given me the same answers last Tuesday, she'd be just above the line, not retarded, because she's being compared to kids slightly younger. You understand what I'm saying? So this whole thing is based on how do you do compared to other kids your age. Now let's go back to the PowerPoint here, and just for a second, and I'm going to give you some examples of questions from each of these tests so you'll get the idea. Okay, the information first. Okay, now I'm going to be reading from the IQ manual. Okay, and and what I'm going to do is I'm not going to give you the actual questions because I don't want to be sued. I don't want the university to be sued and all that kind of stuff. But so I'm not going to read from the manual because I'll be too tempted. What I'm going to do is simply give you some examples of information questions. Okay, put it back on me if you can. Okay, so information questions are, how far is it from 2 given cities? Right? Who discovered a given place? Who invented, name your invention? Okay? It's like a Trivial Pursuit game. It's exactly what it is. Francis, you agree? That's one of my graduate assistants here, and she said, yeah. Okay? I'll tell you one right now. Sometime discovered, because one of the questions was, let them sue me if they want, a couple tests ago, who discovered America? And you were allowed to say Columbus, Leif Erikson, the Vikings, etc. If the kid said the Indians, you were supposed to say, oh, the Indians were already here. But who discovered it? Right? Well, you can't do that anymore. Bill Cosby, by the way, who was a funny stand-up comic. That TV show that everybody likes, but I didn't like it. But he was a great stand-up guy. Did anybody ever see his second TV show, the one he did where he played a retired airport baggage handler? Right, with Madeline Kahn? Those are two of the greatest, two genius comic minds. And when they got together on the screen, they couldn't help but being funny. But he was a great stand-up comic. I'll give you one of his routines. He played running back for Temple. It's a little off color, but we're adults, we can handle it. And finally, Temple University was, always, it was, wasn't that good football team ever. One day they got a TV game, so he's on, and they said to him, coach says, remember, 8 million people are watching this game. Right? You never know when they're going to pan the camera on you. Don't touch yourself, you know where. I don't want to embarrass the guy. He says, second play of the game, I go off tackle, and I get hit, you know where. He said, I remember what the coach said, I grabbed my head, right? And it goes on and on about bandaging his head. And anyway, he's a very funny guy. So one day he heard this and he did a routine on it about discovering America. He said, I saw Cadillac on the street. I said, I think I'll discover that Cadillac, right? So he said, I went and I put the Cosby flag on the Cadillac and I drove away, right? So, I mean, of course he does it 50 times better than I do, but okay, 50,000 times better than I do. But so sometimes they get chased away for political correctness. By the way, there was a question on the SAT test in which a junior who took it proved that the answer was wrong. He actually sent them a proof, and they followed them for, and they finally took it off, right? But in any case, so that's what the information is. It's a kind of like the next one, let's go briefly back here, is called similarities. Okay? And similarities told us, okay, remember, these are all measuring verbal IQ. Similarities told us, come back to me, okay, how are things the same or different? How are a banana and a potato the same? How are they same, not different? How are, I don't know, a ring and an earring the same? How are a nose and a foot the same? Okay? So, and there are certain answers that are allowed, certain answers that are not allowed. For some answers you get full credit, for some answers you get half credit. So if somebody asks you, how are, gee, I can't think of one that's not on the test. Okay, how are a river and an ocean, the same? And that may be on the new one for all I know, I don't know. And you say, well, if you say, well, they both have 5 letters, which is true, okay, you get no credits. If you say they're both wet, you get 1 credit maybe. Or if you say they're both topographical features, you get half credit, 1 point, right? Because you're adding up points. If you say they both have water in them or something, you might get 2. Do you understand? I mean, and by the way, they don't do this by is it logical or not. They do it by giving points so that they get the normal distribution. If we give 2 points to this, it'll make it, so we better only give 1 point to this, right? The third one, let's just come briefly back here, is arithmetic. It's math problems, like the one I gave you, okay? Like math problems. The one I gave you was a typical math problem on there. Come back to me, okay? Okay, I want everyone now to write down your answer to the problem I gave. If shirts cost $6 a piece, and you buy 3 shirts, how much change would you get from a $20 bill? $2. Who had $2? Oh, really? So here's what I want you to do, okay? Here's what we're going to do. You're all going to go buy an item of clothing that costs $6. For every one of you who gets $2 back in change, I will give you $10,000. For every one of you who doesn't, you'll give me $1,000. That's 10 to 1. Anybody want to take that up? Boy, I may have a lot of money. Yeah, you want to do that? Really?
Go down to hard.
Push it down? Push it down?
You go down to hard when they don't charge tax.
Yeah, you got to stay. I was going to say you got to stay out of Delaware where they don't have tax, right? She's going to someplace where there's no tax. Of course, the answer to that question is I don't know. You haven't given me enough information. Is there tax? If there is, how much tax is there? Right? Even here, right? Does anybody here live in someplace far out that doesn't have the metro tax? You'd get a different amount of change than those of the people who live where there is a metro tax. So how many people, when you went in to take this SAT or ACT, were told, don't think too much? Who was told that? Raise your hand, right? Don't overthink the problem. Who was told that? In other words, if you're going to do well on this test, we don't want you to think. We don't want you to consider all the possibilities, all the ramifications, because that'll lower your score. Boy, what a great test. That really shows you who's qualified to go to college. SAT, these tests are exactly the same. And some of them, by the way, are just, okay, it's math problems. The next one, just come back here briefly, vocabulary. Come back to me. I mean, there's nothing to tell you. It's just, what does this word mean? What does that word mean? What does this word mean? What does that word mean? What does that word mean? What does this word mean? What does this word mean? Okay? By the way, I have to tell you, and if they want to assume, they assume. In the similarities test, you're asked, one of the questions is, how is an elbow and a knee the same? And I had, how are an elbow and a knee the same? And the person there says, one of my graduate students was making a joke, he was from Philadelphia. He said, there are both ways to get a seat on the subway. I said, what? He said, first you elbow the little old lady, then you knee her, and then you sit down in the seat she was going to take, right? So I had to laugh, because it's true. It's true. Because he was using it as a verb, and it said a noun, but it's interesting. If you get creative, You're finished on these tests. Don't get creative. Matter of fact, the Princeton Review they have what they call Joe Slug answers, which are the answers for the people who are tricked. There's a trick one, and then you'll see there's some Joe Slug answers, and then there's the obvious one, and then there's some that you could really, if you thought it through, you could say, could be. Okay? And finally, there was a comprehension part on the verbal. Okay? Let's go back to PowerPoint for 1 minute. Thanks. Comprehension. And that was things like, okay, come back to me. That's things like, what are you supposed to do if you see somebody getting mugged in the park? Saying, after the mugger leaves, see if you can roll a person for more money. No. It's, call the police. What are you supposed to do if you see the neighbor's house? I have to tell you one that's true also. What are you supposed to do if you see fire from a neighbor's house? You got no points for tell my mommy. Okay? You got full credit. You got half credit for saying, inform the authorities or this and that. And you got full credit for performing some deed in the meantime, like call the fire department. But one of the full credit answers is go see if something's wrong, or go see if the house is really on fire. There might be smoke coming out of the window from cooking. Go see if the house is really on fire. So the 7-year-old, and this is given from 6 to 16-year-olds, the 7-year-old who goes to see whether the burning house next door is really on fire is more intelligent than the one who says, I better go tell an adult authority. I better go tell my mother, right? By the way, I have my question about a 36-year-old who goes, when sees smoke pouring, who goes to say, well, let me go check and see. All right? So you have to, and by the way, once in my life I saw a house on fire. I'm walking down the street, and all of a sudden there's fire coming, and I ran, and another guy went to one door, and I went to the other. We were just walking, and we banged on the door. Come on, the house is on fire. All of a sudden, it was unbelievable. It gets hot, right? And before I banged twice, and then I ran. Turned out the house was empty, fortunately, that's why. But it's just, right? I mean, that's just a very foolish thing to do. So it's that kind of thing. What do you do if you break your friend's ball by mistake? And there are a lot of that. If you break your friend's doll by mistake, there are a lot of values in there. I can't help it. I got to tell you another real one. What you do if you lose your friend's ball? The answer is get another one. Buy another, replace it. That's the full credit answer. You get 2 points for that answer. You should get a credit. Well, where I came from wasn't true. Where I came from, it snowed all the time. And in those days, we know how boring Super Bowls would be. Okay, I'm broadcasting this the day after the Super Bowl. I'm sorry for the timing. It wasn't a good one. Anyway, baseball was the game when I was a kid in America. We loved baseball, okay? So when Christmas came and Hanukkah came, we get presents. You couldn't play baseball. The snow's 8 feet high, right? It was just unbelievable. I grew up in the snow belt. So you get your baseball, and you couldn't wait. You couldn't wait until the snow finally melted, which was often in April, right? It would snow in April in western New York, okay? Not uncommon. And then you finally go and play baseball. What we did, we go to the corner lot, we go to the playground, and we play baseball. And I don't know how we did. We all had an old baseball in the garage we could play catch with. But we take our new baseballs, and we play until one got lost, or until the cover came apart and got knocked off it or something, right? And then we take the next person's baseball. And it was just, figured that when there's one place we played baseball, if we hit it into a guy's yard, it was a weird foul ball. It had to go to a certain angle, but it got into his yard. We tried to ask him once, and we were all afraid he would kill us if we ever asked him again, right? So he hated it. He kept the balls, right? It just was gone. And when your ball was gone, we used somebody else's ball. And just to say, buy me a new one, it was just considered, you just didn't do that. We had our supply of balls, and then when it started to snow, we stopped playing, and for Christmas and Hanukkah, we get new balls. Okay, that's how it worked, right? And we go again, right? So a lot of it has to do with values, right? But it's in there are others that are so obvious. Then you add those. That's verbal IQ. Let me ask you a question. Okay, let's go to the arithmetic test. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to design a test which is going to show innate arithmetic ability. Because remember, in Texas, these tests are used as a sign of innate ability. It's the law. Learning disabilities is defined as a discrepancy between innate ability and achievement. And the IQ tests are used as innate ability. And most of you, when you think of IQ, think of it as measuring as innate ability, right? Even though the people who make the test don't quite claim that, because it's obviously not true. Okay? How would you make a test to test an innate math ability as opposed to a math achievement? What would be on your innate ability test? So in other words, I'm going to claim to you that I have more innate ability. Anybody ever here take calculus? Okay, bunch of people. I'm going to claim that I had more innate ability in math than they do. But if you give calculus tests, I never took calculus. It used to be a big secret that I never took calculus in high school. I got to advanced algebra and cut it out. But if you give a calculus test, they're going to do better than I do because I just never took it. It's not fair to test me on calculus. I just never learned it. Okay. Who here has a native language that's not English? Okay. Who's not okay. What's your native language? Push it down, push it down, push it down.
Hindi.
Hindi. What's your native language?
Sandra.
Samna?
Sandra.
What kind of language is it?
Spanish.
What?
Spanish.
Spanish. And who else? What's your native language?
Spanish.
Spanish. Okay. So we better take the Hindi one because I took Spanish in high school. Okay. Now she obviously speaks English a lot better than I speak Hindi. Okay. But I'm going to say, look, I have a much better ability. And let's say I'm to speak foreign languages than she does. Languages that are not my native language than she does. It's just that I was never exposed to it. Or I could say the same thing, people speak Spanish. Right? I was never exposed to it. So how are you going to differentiate between achievement, people who have just had the opportunity to learn more, from people who have innate ability? Let's say in arithmetic, in math. How are you going to do that? What would be on your innate ability test that's not on an achievement test? Those of you who are taking the course by tape, turn it off now and email it to me, and then turn it back on. What's going to be on what are you going to put on your innate achievement test that's not going to, and your innate ability test is not going to be in your achievement test? Anybody got an idea? Yeah, that's my answer too. I don't have an idea either. What are you going to do? You have to ask math problems. So if I have two 8-year-olds and one does much better on the math achievement test or on the vocabulary test, I'll say big deal. Sure. Tell me your name.
TJ.
Again?
TJ.
TJ. Sure, TJ did better on the vocabulary test than I did. But I'm going to tell you it's because he had a lot better English teachers than I did. If I'd had his English teachers, I'd do better than he did. How are you going to know? Okay? Now let's go to performance. Performance IQ has the same thing. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Sorry. Okay. The first one is picture completion. See if you can get my picture in there. Speaking of picture completion. All right. What you're done is you're shown a picture. I thought it was funny. Nobody else laughed. Okay. You're shown a picture and something's missing. Like, whoops, sorry. Like you're shown a picture of I don't know, of a frog and its leg is missing. What's missing here? Show a picture of I'm trying to think of pictures that they don't have there. You're showing a picture of a door and the knob is missing. You're showing a picture of a sled and one of the runners is missing. These are not real ones, but it's that kind of stuff. What's missing here? So it's a test for anal compulsive with little things, right? There's one picture where you're showing a picture of a little girl. There's a real one too, the heck with it. And her sock is missing. You know, it's a picture of the whole girl and she's all dressed. You know, it's from head to toe. So the person who notices that a sock is missing is more intelligent than the person who doesn't. How many people, that's your definition of being intelligent? Noticing trivial little things missing or not missing. And no, nobody? Okay. The next one is picture arrangement. I'll tell you how this works. This works as follows. Maybe get back to me so you can see the whole thing. You have a picture arrangement. What do they call them? Like cartoons in the newspaper. Each section is called a frame, right? Is that what's called, a frame? So you have frames. It starts with 3 frames and 4 frames and 5 frames, and they're put down in a scrambled order. It's one order, okay? A determined order, and then you have to put it back in the order that makes a sensible story. Put these in a thing so that they make a sensible story, okay? And there's one predetermined order that you should do it. So they go down in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's one with a little girl in the rain. So you have to put down. It has to spell out, because you just pick it up and it should spell out cloud, right? If there's another one where let's say it was some guy fishing, right? You put down 1, 2, 3, 4, put it down in the scrambled order that they tell you, and then if the kid puts it in the right order, you pick it up and the back says FISH, right? It's just a quickie it's just a quick and dirty for the score. It doesn't matter. You have to put it down in the right order. There's one right order that's accepted. So I gave it to one of my sons when he was older. I said, oh, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take all of these puzzles, put them together in a different order. By the way, you are never asked, how did you get that answer? Can you explain to me what you came up with? If an answer comes up that makes sense, like once, there used to be in one of the old tests, how are a cat and a dog alike? And I was taking it for a friend of my undergraduates before I caught on to this, and she said to me, how are a cat and a dog alike? She was studying this stuff. And I freaked, right? I knew it had to be an easy answer, and I just couldn't think. So I said, well, I mean, you just in that panicky mode. I said, well, I think I remember from biology that cats and dogs have the same progenitor in the evolutionary scale, that felines and canines have the same evolutionary ancestor that split off. I don't know if that's true anymore, but I think I remember. And she gives me a look like I had kicked her, right? Because it may have been right. It was clearly a right answer, but it wasn't in the list of the right answers. You know, you have a list in front of the right answers. So then all of a sudden, I stopped panicking. I said, wait a minute, they both have fur, and she looked a little better. That's probably a half-point answer. And then I said, and they're both house pets, they're both domestic animals. Oh, good. Full credit, right? She gave it to me. Okay? In this picture arrangement, let's go back here. Thanks. In this picture arrangement, you are given more credit. You are given credit for getting the right answer, and the faster you do it, the more credit you get. Or to put it in a different way, if you take time to think things over, you're less intelligent than the person who gets the answer without thinking things over. Time is important. And by the way, as you can see from what I told you about the SAT, time can be used to adjust the curve so you get a normal distribution. If too many people are getting something right, you say, well, let's time it. Let's give you less time to do it. Or let's give you more credit if you do it faster, right? And that'll tend to get more wrong answers and smooth out the curve so you get a normal distribution, right? Here, let me show you what I mean. Okay, here, let's go to the tablet. It says new, there we go. So in other words, let's say I'm getting a curve like this. A lot of people are getting it right, okay? Then I can say, well, you know what? The faster you do it, the more credit you get. A lot more people will get it wrong, and I'll smooth out the curve like this. And that's close enough to a normal distribution to say, okay, good enough. Okay, we'll use that question. So the time is used to adjust. Everything is done for statistics. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, with my picture still in there. Thank you, if you can get in there. Okay, the third one is called block design. I wish I can show these to you. I can show you the blocks. But I can't. I know, I'm out of the picture here. I'll show you the blocks. I can't show you the design, so I really don't want to put those on the screen because I don't want to get sued. What you have here is just a bunch of blocks. I have no place to put this except on the floor. And each block, you can see, here's a block. And each block has one side two sides that are white, 1, 2, two sides that are red, 1, 2, and two sides that are diagonals, 1. See the can you see the diagonal? Can you see it? Okay, two sides like that. Where's the other one? It's there somewhere. There it is. Okay. Two sides that are diagonals. Okay, and then you're given pictures to make out of the blocks. So you might be shown 2 red on the bottom and 2 red on the top, 2 white on the top, and you have to put the blocks together to make it. And there's a certain degree. If you're tipped more than 36 degrees, it's wrong, because then it's a diamond, it's not a block, right? And you have to make the exact design it the same way you see it, okay? And they get harder and harder and harder to do, okay? This is actually, by the way, Francis, you know what this is a test of? Probably, did you study field dependence and independence? Did you study that, field dependence? No? Probably not. So they don't do that too much today. But there was a time, some people are very, very affected by the parts of a task. Some people, they view a task in its parts. Some people see it as a whole. Okay, that's often called field dependence or field sensitivity, seeing the whole. Okay, and field independence, breaking it down into its parts. So people tell you, people who are field independent, they see the parts of the field, they'll become statisticians, they'll become mathematicians. People who are field sensitive are often very good therapists, particularly in group therapy, because they can go, rather than looking at what you think, and you think they can see the whole group dynamic, etc. But anyway, it isn't really related to how smart, but how you look at things, how you sort of take a look at the world. This is, how many people talk about learning styles? Okay, you've learned that in your courses, learning styles, right? Cognitive styles. That's kind of a learning style or a cognitive style, how you look at things. Okay, the next one is object assembly. Let's go back to the PowerPoint if we can. I know I'm driving them crazy back there. Object assembly. Is this working? There it is. And that's just putting together puzzles. It's just putting together puzzles. Okay, so you have a puzzle. Come back to me. You have a puzzle, and it's cut into pieces, right? And you put it together, and you get 1 point for each cut you put together. So let's say you have the picture of a dog, okay, with 4 legs. Okay, you get the dog's head on right, you get the tail on right, but you mix up all the legs. Okay, and you get the ears wrong. Well, you get 2 points. Okay, if you get the tail right and the head right, 2 of the 4 legs right, and 1 of the 2 and the ears right, then you get however many points that is, right? You get 6 out of the 8 points that way, etc. It's putting together puzzles. Now, how many people think, come on, in your heart of hearts, that this is really a pretty good test that leaves some kind of intelligence, spatial intelligence? People think that that's not a bad test of that. Come on, be honest. Raise your, that the ability to put together a puzzle quickly, where how many people here have a total inability to put together puzzles and hate it like poison? Just 3 of us? I'm in there too. Put the camera on me. I'm in there too. How many people are okay at doing puzzles? And how many people are really good? Yeah. Now, how many people think that's at least some sign? Come back to me. We've got about 50-50, about really good, maybe pretty good and really good, maybe 60-40, and not counting the 3 of us who are hopeless. My uncle used to like the puzzles. He called Little Red Riding Hood's cape, just a round red circle. You put it together. I tried 4 pieces, and I was in a mental institution for 6 months. I mean, how can you put it together, right? I hate them. So how many people think that that may be at least of one aspect of intelligence, a sign of one cognitive ability? Who thinks so? Okay, we got a few people, but here's my question to you. If I take a bunch of kids who are 8 years old and I give them puzzles, and I measure their ability to do puzzles, and I take all the kids who have similar abilities, they're about the same, they're about average, okay? And then for the next 6 months, I just, half of them, I randomly divide them, half of them never see a puzzle. They don't play with puzzles, I don't give them puzzles, I take puzzles out of the classroom. And the other half, I give intensive instructions about how to do puzzles, hints how to do puzzles, strategies for puzzles, let them practice puzzles, more puzzles, 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 puzzles. You think on the average, the second group might do better than the first group 6 months later? So how do you know how much of it is innate ability and how much of it is achievement? Same thing with the vocabulary. Yeah, TJ knows more than I do, but how do you know how much of his innate ability, how much is achievement, that he's just been instructed more? There really is no way to know. And then finally, on the old test, there was coding. Okay? And coding, I'll show you what coding was. Okay? You'd be given a, let's go to the overhead here, or the tablet. You'd be given like a this, and then a this, and then a this, and then a that, and then a this. You say every time you see this, every time you see one of those, put 1. Every time you see one of these, put 2. Every time you see one of these, put 3, etc. Okay? Get what I'm saying? That's supposed to be this. Okay? You understand? And then you're given a whole bunch of them to put down. I know what you're thinking. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to say, oh, let me look for all of those and go 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Then all those who do. You're not allowed to do that. If you have that, if you're that smart to figure that out, no. You got to go in order. And the idea is, the better you can remember what they are, the less you have to look up, and the faster you'll do it, and the more you get within a given time. By the way, let me say again, let's go back to the PowerPoint, that all of these, object assembly, block design, picture arrangement, the faster you go, the more time you're given. Okay? The more points you're given. The faster you do it, the more points you're given. Okay? The faster you do it. And then there's an end. Okay? After 2 minutes, forget it. Okay. By the way, in many of these, let's go here. For instance, in the information on the O test, you went until the person got 5 in a row wrong. And the arithmetic 4 in a row. Some 4 in a row, some 3 in a row wrong. Why? Why do they do 5 in a row wrong for some and 4 in a row and 3 for the others? There's only one answer. Go ahead, say it. Why? Say it, push it down.
To maintain the normal distribution?
Yeah, statistics. If I stopped after 4 in a row wrong with information, too many people got it wrong. It screwed it up. If I gave people 5, too many people got it right. There are all kinds of tricks to use, timing tricks. When you stop, how many in a row to use to smooth out that curve. Okay, to get a normal distribution, because otherwise, if you don't, let's go back to, we're on the PowerPoint, right? If you don't get a normal distribution, then these numbers don't count anymore, and you can't use your test. You don't have that smooth percentile stuff. These numbers don't work anymore. Okay? Now, okay. Let's go back, let's come back to me. Okay, there are problems with this stuff, to put it mildly. How many people feel that after what I've told you, that this is really not a very good test of IQ? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you think this is not a very good test of IQ. Almost everybody's hand is up. Well, you're all wrong. You're wrong by definition. This is what IQ is. These tests. What you're really telling me is, hang on, I'm going to say something awful. IQ, what the IQ test measures, is not really very close to what I think intelligence is. IQ is not a very good measure of intelligence, because the only definition of IQ is what this test measures. There's no theory behind it. If you ask Piaget, what's your definitions of intelligence? He'll say, it's how well people think. Then he has definitions of higher and lower level thinking. If you ask other theorists, they'll tell you what their definition of intelligence is, what their definition of achievement is. This is just, and here, never ask the child, how did you get your answer? I meant to tell you, by the way, I got distracted. On that picture arrangement one, I asked my son to put them together. I said, put them together in the order, in a different order from the right one. He got most of them right? I said, and tell me a story. He was able to do it with about half of them. He was able to put together alternative stories. Now, they were pretty cockeyed, weirdo stories, but they made sense. Right? They made sense. Said, you could tell that story. But you're never asked, well, how did you figure? How did you get this? You're never asked that. And in many answers, so how do you know that that's wrong? So in other words, okay, I was going to do it before, but never mind. I'm going to wait. I just tell you, I have the perfect definition of intelligence. It's the absolute, accurate, perfect definition of intelligence. But we'll wait for a little while until I give it to you. Yeah, go ahead.
Why is it that we have to use IQ tests to get into any program, to get any special help, to go to certain schools? Why do they depend on IQ tests?
You're preaching to the choir. I don't know. These tests have been around forever. They're a huge business. They make millions of dollars for the manufacturers. Some people, diagnosticians, make their living, and to a large degree, school psychologists, until recently they finally decided maybe the best thing, if you're going to be a school psychologist, is not to wait till the kid fails, give a test and stick a label on. They make their living from that. Now they're starting to rethink that process.
But we're forced into it. We don't have any choices.
That's exactly
here. We're
right.
forced into it.
Yeah, that's right. No, well, you're not really forced into it. The first process for a child being given a battery of tests is a teacher referral, usually.
Well, parent concern.
Well, the parents usually get concerned by what the teacher says, right? Parent concern. Sometimes it depends, okay? Let me put it this way. The vast majority of kids who are labeled as retarded or learning disabled, there's nothing wrong. This is Lieberman's rule of thumb. There's nothing wrong with them until they get to school, okay? Kids who parents notice something's wrong before then, there probably is something wrong, some factor that's off. But these tests, we'll get to that. The question is, are these tests diagnostic? We'll get to that. It must be very clear to you now that, right, from the interactions that I had with TJ and, tell me again?
Shiva.
And Shiva, right, about the vocabulary and the foreign language, there's no way to know whether it's true or not, right? If somebody does very, very badly on an IQ test, on the math part of the IQ test, you don't know why. So, but we'll get to that in more detail. It's not clear. Okay, let me just, and I mean, I don't know why these tests are given. I don't think, I mean, it's going to be clear to you at the moment, I don't think they're worth very much. Just telling that right now, but they're part of what goes on. Just like coaches today still have their 10-year-old boys on their football teams doing push-ups and sit-ups, even though everybody knows that pre-adolescent you can't develop muscles by doing that. It doesn't do anything. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint and look at the new tests. Okay, here are the new subtests. You'll notice it's not divided into categories. Oops, sorry. Okay, what in blue are new tests, okay? In blue are new tests, okay, are the new tests that have been given. This is the new WISC 4. The blue are the new tests, and the ones with the little pink stars, I don't know, those are the ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those 10 are still the ones that are used to calculate total IQ. Okay? And I'll give you some of those. Okay? Even though, okay, people realize, I'm not going to have a chance to talk about today, but they've made some new tests. I will, besides you, let me tell you one of the problems with some of these, the IQ test as it's done today. Okay, how many people learned to take an average by the time you were in 5th grade? Everybody, right? Okay, what was the first thing that you were told? Come back to me. Well, don't worry, I'll put this slide up next week again. Okay, what was the first thing you were told? When you have to take an average, you can only take an average of things that are what? Okay, let's try this. What's the average of 10 bananas, 4 feet, 3 miles, and 27 toenails? What's the average? Put it down.
You have to have the same measure.
You have to average things that have the same measure, right? I can even take someone, tell me your name?
Vera.
Again?
Vera.
Vera. I can take Vera, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all the numbers on her license plate. Vera, you have a car? Good. all the numbers in her address, the last 4 numbers of her checking account. Want to give this to me now, Vera? Okay. The last 4, put them on television for everybody to see. The last 4 numbers of her checking account, how many miles she drives in a month, right? Add it all up, take an average, you get Vera-ness. But what does it mean? Doesn't mean anything. Now remember, to get standard deviations, I have to take an average and then see the deviation of the average. So I'm going to add up how much you know in math. A little bit here. Let's go back to the other slide here. Let's go back to this one, but it comes out the same. Okay? A little bit of your Trivial Pursuit, a little bit of how well you do puzzles, a little bit of how well you do math, some vocabulary, a little bit of how well you can notice something missing in a picture, and a little bit of your ability to do this coding, which I guess is supposed to measure your short-term memory. Add it all up and get a number. So your IQ is 114. 114 what? What does it mean? What are you talking about here? All you've done is pick tests the same way Benet did. Well, it seems to be stuff that's related to school and intelligence, right? But what does it mean? It doesn't mean much of anything. Okay? This is the first time I've done it with a new test, so I just changed my mind about how we're going to do this. We're going to talk about this and we'll show the old test. What are you talking about here? As a matter of fact, if you look at these tests, let's go back. If you look at these tests, an examination of the IQ reveals that, first of all, they are tests of various types of school type of tasks. Okay, the old IQ test. I'm going to tell you, nothing's changed on the new one. That they predict how well you're going to do in school because it's pretty obvious, right, that they have to do in school. Obviously, someone with a high, who does well on the math test is probably more likely to do well in math than someone who does low on the math part. TJ is obviously more likely to do well in English than I am because he did very well on the word recognition, at least for that part of English. The reading, if you give a reading with a lot of words in it that I don't know, I'm not going to do as well as a lot of words that he knows. TJ, you like to read? Where's your down?
Yes.
Good. One of my sons, I said, why don't you read? He said, I read what they make me read. What do I care? Now he's a writer, right? He's a stand-up comic and he writes material for himself and sometimes for other people, but don't ask, okay? So so if you give a book to read, TJ understands the words better than I do, he's going to do better, right? So this is called a validity, right? A predictive validity. By and large, it's true that people, if I take a whole bunch of people whose IQ is 125 and a whole bunch of people whose IQ is 80, I can predict that on the average that people 125 will do better in school than people's IQ is 80. Because most of these tests are, because I'm testing their IQ, but I can predict much better, by the way, with their school grades, but that's a different story. Okay? But there is a group of people whose IQ is okay, who don't do well in school. We call those people learning disabled. Blame it on them, okay? And what IQ is an attempt to quantify the number of correct answers a child gives compared to the norm for his or her age. Okay? That's still true. Okay? So what happened is that, okay, get my picture out of the first question. So here are the assumptions that are made by IQ tests and why they're problematic. Okay, by the way, those of you who are taking this on tape, I am probably not going to finish in 2 tapes, in the 4 sessions assigned for this, but don't worry, we'll finish the course. So don't call me and ask me on what tape is this and this, because I won't remember, okay? The first assumption that's made by IQ tests is that age is a valid criterion for measuring intelligence. Okay? Right? You compare it to other people your age. Okay, we're going to discuss each one of these. IQ tests assume that chronological age is a valid measure of intelligence. But 100 years of studying child development has made it abundantly clear that there are variations in the speed at which normal children learn and develop. Okay? The speed of development is often not a reliable predictor of final achievement. In fact, in many cases, speed has no predictive value whatsoever. So in other words, come back to me for a second. Right? Let's take males. Okay, it's true for females too. But the ability to throw a baseball, right? Or to lift weights right, increases dramatically once you reach puberty. Okay? It's true for girls too, as a matter of fact, not just for boys. Okay? And you're much, you know, so a 13-year-old who has not reached, or a 12-year-old who has not reached puberty is not going to be able to throw a baseball or lift weights nearly as heavy as a 12-year-old who has. Okay? So I'm going to say, oh, by the way, when they're 27, the 12-year-old who has will be a much better athlete than the 12-year-old who has. So that's baloney. People who learn to talk earlier are much better talkers. The person who learned to talk at age 11 months is going to be a much better speaker and talker and have a much better vocabulary than the person who learned to talk started to talk at 13 months. That's baloney. It's just not true. So because you're better in math when you're 6 years old, that's a sign that you're going to be a great mathematician and the kid who's a little behind you can't be? That's baloney. It's just nonsense. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Using chronological age as a standard by which intelligence is measured, it uses an invalid measure. It's just not true. Okay, let's see if we can get one more in. Okay? The second one is people have a standard environment. Okay? Look, we have seen that many questions asked on the IQ test, vocabulary, math, general knowledge, tests learn knowledge. Even puzzles test stuff you've learned. How many puzzles? A kid who's never seen a puzzle obviously won't do as well as one who has. But in order for these tests to be a measure of innate ability, we have to assume that everyone has had exactly equal exposure to the items on the test. The only way to explain the fact that TJ knows vocabulary better than I do is that we've been exposed to exactly the same amount of language, always. And therefore, the only way to assume, the only reason that his language is better than mine, his vocabulary is better than mine, is because he's smarter about language than I am, some innate capacity. Okay, even that's questionable. Okay, but we know that children's environments are not the same. Okay, and since this is obviously the case, how do we know whether any answers reflect an innate ability or the amount of exposure the kids had to the test? In fact, it is impossible to sort out how much knowledge, how much the answers on an IQ test are due to environment, how much are due to heredity, if you will, or to other factors. Okay? Next time when we come back, we're going to see at least 6 other objections, to IQ tests. Well, I only have 5 here. Okay? And then we're going to look at the new way in which IQ tests have tried to overcome some of these objections and basically have not very well succeeded. And then we're going to look into the labeling game and how kids are labeled as deficient by the use of these standardized tests. Okay, see you next time.